Captain Mara Ellison stood at the edge of the palace terrace, her heart beating like a drum in her chest. The sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows across the gleaming white marble floor. Behind her, the crew of the Argo watched in silent anticipation. Before her lay the greatest moment of her career, the first meeting between humanity and the rulers of Aurelia Prime. In her hands, she held a small bouquet of moon orchids, fragile, pale blossoms that glowed faintly in the evening light. The palace itself was a marvel of alien architecture. Tall spires of translucent crystal rose into the sky, their tips catching the last rays of sunlight and scattering rainbow colors across the courtyard. Gardens of lush alien plants framed the terrace on three sides, their leaves a riot of blues and purples that seemed to hum with life. In the distance, twin moons hovered over the horizon, one silver and the other rose gold. The scene felt like a dream Mara had trained her whole life to live. Mara adjusted her uniform jacket, smoothing the wrinkle near her shoulder. She was dressed in the standard diplomatic attire, a fitted tunic of dark blue with silver trim, symbolizing peace between stars. Yet underneath her calm exterior, she felt a wave of nerves. She glanced at the bouquet once more. On Earth, moon orchids were rare. They bloomed only in the dark, cool caves of Luna's North Ridge, places few explorers dared to go. For Mara, they represented hope, courage, and the fragile beauty of peace. She hoped the princess would understand. A soft chime sounded behind her, and the great palace doors began to open. The marble walls on either side slid apart, revealing a slender figure framed in the doorway. The audience held its breath as the princess emerged. She was taller than most humans, standing nearly 2 meters in height. Her skin was smooth and pale violet, as if dusted with starlight. Her hair fell in a waterfall of silver green, braided with delicate pearls that glowed with an inner light. She wore a flowing gown of translucent fabric that shimmered with every color of the rainbow, shifting like the surface of a bubble. Mara took a steadying breath and took a step forward. The courtiers of Aurelia Prime lined the sides of the terrace, their eyes bright with curiosity and a hint of caution. They wore robes and headdresses that marked their rank, but none dared speak or move. Even the palace guards, tall beings in polished armor, stood still as statues, their alien weapons lowered at their sides. As the princess drew nearer, Mara extended the bouquet with both hands. "Princess Amara," she began in clear, measured tones, "I bring you these moon orchids as a sign of friendship. On Earth, they bloom only under the light of the distant moon. They speak of hope in darkness and beauty in the impossible." For a moment, Princess Amara did nothing but tilt her head, her crystalline blue eyes studying the flowers. A single feather-soft petal drifted to the marble floor between them. Mara swallowed hard. This was the moment she had imagined 100 times. The princess's graceful smile, the gentle acceptance of peace. Instead, there was silence. A creak echoed from the far edge of the terrace as one of the palace doors closed. In that instant, Mara felt the weight of every human on every colony. She held her breath, refusing to let her nerves break her composure. She watched as Amara's lips pressed together, and the silence grew so loud that Mara could almost hear her own heartbeat. Behind her, Chief Science Officer Dr. Aran Rao shifted nervously. He had spent weeks researching Aurelian culture, poring over half-decoded transmissions for any clue about their customs. But nothing in his reports had warned of this. No mention that a gift might be met with such stillness. Mara glanced at him briefly. His expression was calm but unreadable. He gave her a slight nod as if to say, "Stay the course." Mara steadied her voice and spoke again, softer this time. "I understand if you find this unusual. On Earth, we believe that flowers can bridge worlds." She paused, hoping her words would reach beyond language barriers. "If this gesture offends you, I offer my apologies. My intention is to honor you and to open a path to peace." The princess's eyes flicked from the flowers to Mara's face. The courtiers leaned slightly forward, their murmurs rising in a gentle wave. The air felt electric. Mara felt as though she stood on the edge of a star collapsing, the energy contained, within the moment ready to burst. Then the unthinkable happened. Princess Amara reached forward and plucked a single moon orchid from the bouquet. The other blossoms fell from Mara's trembling hands, petals scattering like white snow across the marble. Amara held the orchid between slender fingers and brought it close to her face. For a heartbeat, time seemed to stop. The princess inhaled, or at least she moved as if inhaling, letting the faint, sweet scent fill the air. A soft glow pulsed through the orchid, and the pearl-like beads in Amara's hair responded, twinkling in time with the flower. Mara felt a warm rush of relief wash over her. This was not a rejection, it was a test. The princess was not angered, but curious. Mara dared to hope once more. Amara tilted her head and spoke in a voice as clear and gentle as wind chimes. "These blossoms?" she said, her words flowing in a melody that felt familiar and strange all at once. "They carry meaning." She looked at Mara, her eyes no longer cold but alive with interest. "You have given more than flowers. You have given intent." Mara blinked, surprised that she understood the word so easily. She had studied Aurelian language for months, but hearing it spoken, she knew she still had much to learn. "Princess Amara, I mean only friendship. I wish to learn from your people and to share our own stories." Her words felt small in the vastness of the terrace, but she spoke them with sincerity. The princess smiled then, a slow, radiant curve of her lips that lit up her entire face. It was not a human smile. It was something more, a gentle release of tension, like dawn breaking after the longest night. The courtiers exhaled as one, and a ripple of applause began at the back of the way, terrace spreading forward until the sound filled the air. Mara straightened, her nerves finally easing. She offered a small bow. "Thank you, princess," she said, her voice steady. In that moment, she felt the promise of something new, an alliance born not of force or fear, but of understanding and respect. As the applause died down, Amara extended the moon orchid back toward Mara. "Let this bloom between our worlds," she said, placing the flower gently in Mara's hand. "May it grow in peace." Mara held the orchid close, feeling its soft petals brush her palm. She knew then that this single moment, this simple exchange, would change the course of history. And as the twin moons rose fully into the night sky, she felt hope bloom in her heart, as fragile and beautiful as the moon orchids themselves. The night air on Aurelia Prime was cool and still. As Captain Mara Ellison stood on the palace terrace, the moon orchids resting gently in her hand. The soft glow of the twin moons painted pale silver and rose gold patterns across the marble floor. Inside the palace, torches flickered behind tall crystalline pillars, sending dancing shadows across the manicured gardens. For a moment, everything felt suspended in time. Princess Amara held one of the moon orchids between her slender violet fingers. Her eyes, bright as stars, studied the delicate flower, but her expression remained unreadable. Mara's heart pounded. She waited for Amara to smile, to nod, to give some sign of approval, but the princess simply stared, motionless, as if trying to decipher a riddle hidden within the petals. Behind Mara, the crew of the Argo dared not breathe. Lieutenant Chen, the communications officer, hovered near the edge of the terrace. His pale face betrayed his worry. Dr. Aaron Rao, the science officer, watched intently through his handheld translator device, his brow furrowed as he tried to interpret Aurelian body language. None of them had prepared for such a long, silent moment. Mara cleared her throat softly. "Princess Amara," she said, her voice steady, though her chest felt tight. "I hope my gift honors you." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "On Earth, moon orchids are rare and precious. They speak of hope growing in darkness." The princess did not reply. Instead, she turned the flower slowly, examining every fold of its pale petals. A single petal drifted to the marble floor and settled softly at Mara's boot. The gentle thud echoed in the hush that had fallen over the terrace. Mara glanced down at the fallen petal, She thought of the caverns on Luna where these orchids grew, places lit only by the faint glow of bioluminescent moss. She remembered the chill in her bones as she first discovered them, the thrill of knowing that something so fragile could thrive in utter darkness. But the orchids had not bloomed alone. They needed careful tending, water drawn from icy veins, and light balanced with shadow. In that moment, Mara wondered if the gesture she had made was too delicate for this grand palace, with its towering spires and crystalline splendor. A soft murmur rippled through the assembled Aurelian courtiers. Their robes rustled as they shifted position, their voices a gentle wave of whispered Aurelian words. The ornate headdresses on their heads chimed like tiny bells. Mara could not understand the language fully, but the tone felt tense, an undercurrent of surprise, of question. She swallowed hard and took a small step forward. "If this gesture does not please you," she continued, "I can offer something else. I have sent messages to your scholars, your artists, your healers. We wish to share our knowledge and learn from yours." She raised her voice just enough for the courtiers near the front to hear. "We come in peace." "Still," Emera said. "Nothing." She looked past Mara toward the starfield above. The night sky on Aurelia Prime was filled with thousands of distant suns, far more than could be seen from Earth. Mara could see them reflected in Emera's eyes, along with the faint glow of hope. Or was it doubt? She could not tell. Mara felt a bead of sweat trail down her temple. She pressed her lips together before speaking again. "Princess, I do not wish to offend your people by breaking your customs. Please tell me what is proper." Her words trembled slightly, but her gaze remained fixed on Emera. The princess turned her head, tilting it to one side. It was a small motion, but it spoke volumes. Her crystalline hair caught the torchlight and shimmered like a waterfall of light. She lifted the orchid to her chest, near the glowing pearl beads woven into her braid. The bioluminescent pearls pulsed softly, as if reacting to the human flower. Mara felt a surge of relief. Something in that gesture told her that Emera was not angry. Perhaps she was simply curious or cautious. She hoped the princess would accept her explanation and that the fragile peace between their worlds would bloom, like the orchids themselves. But just as Mara began to relax, the air shifted. A soft hum rose from the palace roof, a distant vibration that grew steadily louder. The crystalline spires above them began to resonate, producing a low, musical tone. The courtyard walls trembled slightly. The courtiers gasped, and a few guards raised their weapons in unison. Mara's eyes widened. She looked to the eastern tower, where a row of crystalline sensors lined the spire. They glowed bright blue, then shifted to a warning red. The palace was signaling an alert. She barely had time to wonder why the sensors would detect a threat. After hours of silence, when another sound broke through the stillness, a thunderous boom from beyond the palace walls. The gardens shook, and several tropical shrubs of blue and purple leaves swayed violently. Marble columns cracked along their length. The twin moons above flickered as if the sky itself trembled. Mara instinctively reached for her sidearm, though. She knew firing on palace grounds would be a grave breach of protocol. Her crew followed suit, drawing their own energy pistols. Princess Emera snapped her head toward the disturbance, her violet eyes blazing with alarm. She dropped the moon orchid and drew back her hand. For a moment, chaos threatened to spill over the terrace. But then Mara heard it. The rumble wasn't an attack. It was music. A deep, rolling bass that vibrated through the air, followed by a high, clear melody that rose and fell like ocean waves. Emera's expression softened as the music washed over her. The guards lowered their weapons, and the courtiers gasped in wonder rather than fear. Mara looked beyond the palace walls and saw the source, an enormous creature. 6 limbs, each ending in wide fluted pads, stood at the edge of the garden. It balanced on its hind legs, its skin a lacquered black flecked with silver. From its throat, it projected sound waves that formed the strange music. The music was unlike anything Mara had ever heard. It was inhuman yet profound, carrying a sense of sorrow and joy all at once. The creature's eyes, luminescent orbs set high on its skull, swept across the terrace, resting on Amara and then on Mara. It cocked its head, as if seeking approval. Mara's crew whispered among themselves. Dr. Rao's device tracked the frequencies and displayed diagrams of wave patterns. Lieutenant Chen opened a channel to the Argo, ready to beam support in if needed. But Mara held up a hand, signaling, "Calm." She raised her voice again, louder this time to be heard over the music. "Princess," she called. "I do not know this creature's intent, but I mean no harm to it or your people." She turned to face the creature and bowed her head slightly, a gesture of respect. "We seek only understanding." For a moment, the music paused, the silence as pure and deep as the void between stars. Then the creature lowered its head and let the music resume at a softer, gentler volume. The melody shifted to a warm, welcoming theme. Mara felt relief flood through her. The creature's response, gentle, almost tentative, felt like an invitation. She knew then that Amara's silence had been a test, to see if Mara would remain calm under pressure and show respect for unknown life. Amara stepped forward, her gown's rainbow hues flickering in harmony with the creature's song. She raised her hands in a gesture of greeting, 3 fingers extended on each hand, palms open. Mara recalled that Aaron had once translated this as a traditional Aurelian welcome. She copied the gesture carefully. The music swelled in response, and the creature's pads glowed with bioluminescent patterns. The palace sensors quieted. The world seemed to breathe again, and the tension melted into a new sense of unity. Mara exhaled. She held the last remaining moon orchid close to her heart and looked at Princess Amara. The princess nodded, a gentle, accepting nod, and lifted her own hand in return. In that frozen moment, with music and moonlight surrounding them, the fragile beginnings of friendship took root. And though the night was young, humanity's place among the stars felt a little more certain. Under the silver light of Aurelia Prime's twin moons, Captain Mara Ellison and Princess Amara entered the palace's inner garden. The air was filled with the sweet scent of night-blooming lumiflora and the soft hum of bioluminescent insects. Court scholars and diplomats followed at a respectful distance, their steps silent on the smooth white stone path. The tension from the first encounter still lingered in Mara's mind, but she felt a cautious hope growing inside her. As they walked, Amara held the single moon orchid Mara had offered. The flower's pale petals pulsed softly, as if alive with its own heartbeat. At her side, Dr. Aaron Rao studied the princess's every movement through a handheld translator device. Lieutenant Chen and a small security detail brought up the rear, ever watchful for surprises. Mara spoke first, her voice low and calm. "Princess Amara, I wish to learn more about your customs. Please tell me what the moon orchid means to your people." Amara turned her head, the glowing pearls in her hair chiming softly. She lifted one hand and traced a finger along a petal's edge. "These orchids," she said, her voice echoing in the still night, "speak more than words. Their petals carry messages, if one knows how to read them." Mara leaned forward. "I want to understand. Please teach me." Amara paused at a small pavilion, its roof of crystalline glass reflecting the moonlight. She motioned for Mara to sit on a low bench beside a shallow reflecting pool. The courtiers settled around them in a loose circle, attentive but silent. Amara placed the orchid on a flat, carved stone in front of them. She pressed a fingertip to its center, and the flower glowed brighter. "On Aurelia Prime," she began, "we use flowers like words. Each bloom, each color, and even each petal's curve can carry meaning. The moon orchid is rare. It grows only where light is most scarce and most needed. To give it is to offer a test." Mara's eyes widened. "A test?" she repeated. Amara's violet eyes met hers. "Yes," it asks. "Are you worthy? Do you understand the cost of fragility? Do you have the patience to care for something precious?" She lifted the orchid and turned it so the petals faced upward. "You gave this to me expecting simple goodwill. Instead, you offered more. You challenged me." Mara swallowed hard. She thought of her training on Earth, lessons in diplomacy, in reading body language, in understanding foreign cultures. Yet none had prepared her for a gift that spoke in riddles. She bowed her head respectfully. I did not know. I meant only to honor you and your people. Amara's lips curved in the faintest of smiles. Your intention was pure. Your heart speaks in truth. That is why you passed the test. She pressed another petal gently. The flower opened slightly, revealing a tiny cluster of glowing stamens. This is the signal of acceptance. Mara felt warmth flood her chest. She had passed a trial she did not fully understand. Her shoulders relaxed for the first time in hours. Thank you, Princess, she said softly. But now I wish to speak of something equally important. I wish to share Earth's stories, our art, our hopes. Amara nodded and stood. She motioned for Mara to rise as well. Then let us exchange words, she said. Words that draw new flowers in our hearts. They walked deeper into the garden where lantern-like blooms hung from twisting branches. The path bent around a clear pond, where silver koi glided beneath floating petals of night-bloom flora. The courtiers followed, some murmuring quietly, among themselves, others staring at Mara with curiosity. Dr. Rao broke the silence. Princess Amara, Captain Ellison brought this translation device. It can convert between Aurelian and basic galactic. Will you allow me to demonstrate? He held out his device, its smooth metal casing marked with the emblem of the United Earth Federation. Amara regarded the device with interest. She glanced at Mara, who gave a slight nod. Proceed, she said. Dr. Rao activated the device, and it emitted a soft blue glow. He spoke a phrase in basic galactic. We come seeking friendship and knowledge. The device's speakers translated it into Aurelian with perfect clarity. Amara smiled, and the pearls in her hair pulsed in response. Impressive, she said. Then she spoke in her own tongue. We welcome friendship and curiosity. The device clicked softly and translated her words back into basic. The translators recorded every nuance. Mara watched in fascination. The device was a marvel, but she wondered how many meanings it might miss. Words were only one part of communication. Intention, tone, and cultural context mattered just as much. She realized then that the moon orchid had revealed her true intentions in a way no machine ever could. They reached a clearing where a single, massive tree stood. Its trunk was wide as a small house and its leaves shone like polished metal. Beneath the tree, petals drifted in the breeze, landing softly on the ground. Amara gestured for Mara to sit on a stone bench carved into the roots. Amara sat beside her and placed the moon orchid in Mara's open palm. Now that our hearts have spoken, I offer you my world, she said. Take this bloom as a living link between us. Mara accepted the orchid, feeling its gentle warmth. I will care for it, she promised. On my ship, I will nurture it and study it. When it blooms again, I will know more of your people's ways. Amara's eyes shone with pride. And when it blooms, I will listen to Earth's stories. She reached into her gown and withdrew a small, shining seed pod. This is the heart tree seed. It carries the spirit of our home. Plant it on your world and you will grow a tree that sings under 2 moons. Mara's breath caught. A gift so powerful carried great responsibility. She took the seed pod with careful fingers. I will plant it on Luna, she said, between the caves where the moon orchids grow. Amara inclined her head. Do this, and our worlds will be bound by living roots. At that moment, a soft wind rose, stirring the petals around them. The night bloom flora glowed in unison, and the lantern-like blooms overhead swayed gently. It was as if the garden itself celebrated the union of human and Aurelian hearts. Mara looked up at the massive tree and saw that its leaves pulsed in time with the moon orchid in her hand. She felt a deep connection to this place, to this princess, and to the fragile bloom that had carried so much meaning. A slight crack sounded from the palace entrance. Mara turned to see Amara's chief advisor, a tall figure in silver robes, approaching with a scroll in hand. He bowed deeply before the princess and whispered something in her ear. Amara's expression became thoughtful. She rose and addressed Mara. Diplomatic talks begin at dawn, but tonight you are my guest. Join me in the Feast of Petals. She motioned toward a long table set beneath the massive tree, laden with dishes that glowed softly, cupcakes spun from crystallized fruits, soups that shimmered with bioluminescent oils, and cakes of spun sugar shaped like local birds. Mara's crew stepped forward, their faces alight with wonder. They settled at the table, still awed by the beauty and serenity of the garden. Mara sat beside Amara, the moon orchid and seed pod between them like tokens of a new friendship. As they ate, Amara told stories of Aurelia Prime, the time when their world was dark and silent before the dawn of bioluminescent life, the art they painted on flower petals, and the songs they learned from the singing trees. Mara shared tales of Earth's oceans, its forests, and the vast deserts where hardy flowers bloomed in sand. Laughing softly, Mara realized how much they had in common: love of beauty, respect for life, and the desire to learn from each other. And all of this had begun with a simple gift of flowers. By the time the feast ended, the moon orchids in Mara's hand had opened fully, revealing their glowing centers like stars brought to Earth. The seed pod rested beside it, a promise of new life. As the last course concluded, Amara rose and offered her hand. "Come," she said, "let us walk under the moons and speak until dawn." Mara took her hand, and together they stepped into the moonlit garden, petals drifting around them like gentle rain. In that moment, the fragile language of petals had become a bridge between worlds, a bridge built on respect, curiosity, and an unexpected test of worthiness. And as they walked, Captain Mara Ellison knew that humanity's story on Aurelia Prime had only just begun. Before dawn, Captain Mara Ellison awoke to the soft glow of Aurelia Prime's twin moons. She slipped from her quarters in the royal wing and followed a marble corridor toward the palace gardens. There, under the shooting stars and pale moonlight, Princess Amara waited beside the great reflecting pool. The air was cool, and petals of night-blooming flowers drifted across the water's surface. "Good morning, Captain," Amara said, her voice as gentle as moonlight. "Come walk with me." Mara joined her, and together they strolled along the garden path. The petals formed a soft carpet under their feet. For a moment, words were not needed. Each felt the quiet wonder of a world so different from theirs, yet filled with the same sense of life and hope. When the sun's first light crept over the palace towers, they parted at the Grand Council Hall. Courtiers and dignitaries gathered in a high, domed chamber, where walls of crystal let in beams of colored light. At the front sat the Council of Stars, Aurelia Prime's ruling body. Each member wore a headdress of glowing pearls and robes of midnight blue. Mara and Amara entered together. The council fell silent. Aurelian custom placed the princess at the side of her guest, showing respect for visitors. Amara motioned for Mara to stand at the dais beside her. High Counselor Nival, an elder with hair of spun silver, leaned forward. "Princess," he said, voice echoing softly, "we welcome our guest, Captain Mara Ellison of Earth. You have offered the moon orchid and passed the test of worthiness. Now you must speak your purpose." Mara bowed deeply. "Honored High Counselor and Council of Stars," she began, "I come in peace on behalf of all humanity. We seek friendship, trade of knowledge, and shared growth. We offer our science and ask to learn your wisdom." Counselor Denmar, a stern figure whose robes glowed dark violet, stood. "Your words are lovely, Captain," he said, "but Earth's history is not without violence. How can we trust humans not to conquer us as you have done to others?" A ripple passed through the chamber. Mara felt her chest tighten. She had prepared for questions on diplomacy, but not an accusation so blunt. "Counselor Denmar," she said evenly, "I understand your fear. On Earth, nations have fought and conquered, but humanity has learned. We have joined in unions, shared resources, and built peace through understanding. I have come as one person, no flag, no weapon drawn, to show that our people wish to learn, not to rule." Denmar's eyes narrowed. "Words can be hollow." Mara met his gaze. Then let our actions speak. I propose we plant the heart tree seed you gave, me in the palace grounds. We will nurture it together, human biologists and Aurelian gardeners side by side. Let the tree grow as a living promise of our alliance. A murmur went through the council. Amara stepped forward. My people's hearts know Captain Ellison is sincere. I ask the council to accept her proposal. High Counselor Naval raised a hand to quiet the chamber. Very well, he said. We will vote on the joint planting of the heart tree. All in favor, raise your hands. One by one, glowing fingers went up. Denmar hesitated, but when Amara glowed with approval, he lowered his skepticism and joined the vote. The decision was unanimous. A ripple of relief passed through the hall. Mara bowed to the council. Thank you, she said. We will begin at once. Outside the hall, a sudden tremor shook the palace. Crystal pillars chimed like warning bells. The ground shivered beneath their boots. Courtiers gasped and exchanged looks of alarm. Amara's eyes widened. Seismic activity, she said. Rare, but it happens. Mara's training kicked in. Is anyone hurt? She called. A guard knelt beside a fallen servant. No serious injuries, Princess, he reported, but parts of the garden labyrinth are cracking. Water channels may burst. Amara nodded. We must act quickly. Captain, will your crew help stabilize the garden walls? Their technology could reinforce the arches. Mara turned to her officers by her communicator. Argo team, deploy nanoweld units to the palace gardens. We need to shore up the arches and seal the water conduits. She snapped the device shut and faced Amara. We will help. Within minutes, human engineers and Aurelian gardeners rushed into the lush corridors of the palace grounds. The gardens were filled with twisting vines, hanging lantern blooms, and winding stone walkways. Water ran in shallow channels beside the paths, tending each plant. Where pillars had cracks, tiny drones hovered and applied glowing welds that fused the crystals back together. Aurelian gardeners used bioluminescent sap to seal fissures in tree bark. Together they worked in careful harmony. Humans guided the drones, and gardeners guided the sap. When a water channel threatened to flood the roses of morning dew, they used flexible tubes to redirect the flow until the channels could be permanently sealed. Mara moved through the garden, checking on each team. She paused beside Amara, who was gently stroking a lantern bloom that had drooped dangerously close to the cracks. Amara looked up. Your people's machines are impressive, she said. Mara smiled. Your gardener's knowledge of plants is priceless. Without you, we might have forced a solution that damaged the blooms. Amara nodded. Together, we find balance. After an hour of swift repair, the quake subsided. The drones powered down and the sap hardened clear as glass. The palace gardens were intact once more, bathed in the light of morning. High Counselor Naval approached, awe on his face. Your cooperation has saved our home, he said to Mara. We are grateful. Counselor Denmar smiled, a genuine, small smile. Perhaps humans do learn from their past, he admitted. Amara placed a hand on Mara's arm. See, she said softly. We grow stronger together. Mara looked around at the restored garden, pillars gleaming, water flowing gently, flowers tipped with dew. In the center, on a raised stone dais, stood the heart tree seed, planted unassuming yet full of promise. They had begun its first roots together. She turned to Amara. This garden will be our symbol, she said. A monument to friendship and cooperation. Amara reached into her gown and withdrew 2 moon orchids, fresh blossoms grown in the palace hothouse. She handed one to Mara and tucked the other behind her own ear. Mara accepted the orchid and placed it in her hair, just above her ear. May our worlds bloom as these flowers do. Amara smiled, and her pearls glowed warmly. We will watch over the heart tree together, and when it blooms we will know that our alliance is strong. As the twin moons set and Aurelia Prime's sun rose, Captain Mara Ellison and Princess Amara stood side by side in the palace gardens. Behind them, the heart tree seed lay nestled in the soil, waiting to grow. Ahead of them, a new chapter of unity and hope began, one rooted in trust, cultivated with care, and destined to flourish among the stars. The first light of Aurelia Prime's sun filtered through the crystal spires as Captain Mara Ellison stepped onto the palace terrace. At her side walked Princess Amara, each carrying a single moon orchid, freshly bloomed and glowing softly in the early morning. Between them, perched on a low marble pedestal, stood the young heart tree sapling. Its tiny leaves quivered as a gentle breeze passed through the gardens. Mara paused to study the sapling. It was small now, no taller than her knee, but its roots had already begun to spread in the rich alien soil. She could almost imagine its future height, its branches dancing above the palace roofs. Around her, human engineers and Aurelian gardeners arranged delicate support wires and applied bioluminescent nutrient gels. The two teams worked in harmony, their laughter mingling with the song of distant birds. Princess Amara turned to Mara. "Today we celebrate," she said, her purple eyes bright. "The planting of the heart tree marks the birth of our alliance." Mara smiled and held up her moon orchid. "Then let us begin the ceremony." She placed the flower at the base of the sapling, nestling it gently among the leaves. Amara followed, laying her own orchid alongside. The two blossoms glowed brighter as if recognizing each other. A soft chime echoed across the terrace. High Counselor Naval emerged through the garden arch, followed by the Council of Stars and dignitaries. From distant star systems, Mara bowed, and Amara curtsied. The guests formed a semicircle around the sapling, their eyes fixed on the new life at its center. High Counselor Naval raised his hands for silence. "Friends of Aurelia Prime, and honored guests from the stars, we gather today to witness a solemn promise. The planting of this heart tree sapling binds our worlds in peace." He turned to Mara. "Captain Ellison, would you speak the words of unity?" Mara stepped forward, her heart warm with pride. She spoke clearly, though her voice trembled with emotion. "I speak for all humanity when I say, we honor your trust. We vow to protect this tree and this friendship. As its roots grow strong, so too will our bond. May our worlds share knowledge, art, and joy under its branches." When she finished, Amara spoke in Orlean. The translator device adjusted its settings and the words came in gentle tones. "We welcome Earth into our world. We promise to teach and learn, to heal and grow. Together we will face challenges and celebrate triumphs. Let this tree stand as a living symbol of our new dawn." A soft wave of applause rose from the assembly. The dignitaries approached in turn, placing small offerings, shards of crystal, vials of water from distant moons, seeds from every known world, around the sapling. Each gift whispered of unity across the galaxy. As the ceremony concluded, Mara and Amara led their guests into the palace's grand hall for a feast. The long table was draped in silken runners that shifted colors like the dawn sky. Platters of alien fruits glowed like lanterns. Clear bowls held delicate pastries scented with night bloom nectar. Music drifted from a string quartet of Aurelian instruments, their melodies weaving with the laughter of humans. Mara sat beside Amara and they shared a quiet smile. "I never imagined my first diplomatic mission would feel like this," Mara said softly. "I feel at home." Amara's hand brushed Mara's. "You have made our home your own," she replied. "We have much to learn from each other." Mara nodded. "I want to bring your flowers back to Earth. Moon orchids and heart tree seedlings. Our botanists will care for them, and our children will grow up knowing your world." Amara's eyes shone. "And I will send Aurelian artists to paint Earth skies and oceans. Our songs will tell your stories." At that moment, Dr. Aaron Rao approached with Lieutenant Chen. "Captain Princess," he said, "you may wish to see this." He handed Mara a small data pad. She tapped its surface and brought up a holographic star map. Mara studied the map. Dot by dot, it showed human colonies and Aurelian worlds. Where none existed before, new points flickered. Planned trade stations, research outposts, cultural exchanges. A ribbon of light connected Aurelia Prime to Luna, and from there to Mars, Europa, and beyond. Look, Chen said, pointing. In one cycle, we've already scheduled 3 joint missions: medical exchange, art symposium, and a study of bioluminescent ecosystems. Emera leaned closer. Our peoples will travel, learn, and celebrate together. This map, it is the future we dreamed of. Mara felt a surge of gratitude. The risk, the unknowns, the silent moments of fear, all had led to this. She tapped the map, zooming in on Luna. I will command the mission personally. We'll plant heart tree seeds in Earth's moon caves, and send our scholars to study your ecology. Aurelian dignitaries gathered behind them, their voices soft with excitement. The plan resonated through both cultures. Where once stood 2 worlds separated by light years, now there was a single path forward. After the feast, Mara and Emera returned to the garden terrace. The moon orchids they had worn in their hair still glowed faintly. They knelt by the heart tree sapling, now bathed in soft starlight despite the rising sun. Emera placed a palm on the young trunk. Will you stay and help tend the tree, she asked. Mara's eyes glistened. I will, and I will return to Earth with stories of Aurelia Prime. Our people will speak of your kindness for generations. They rose, and Mara extended her hand. Emera took it, their fingers entwined in a gesture of unity. Behind them, the garden seemed to breathe, flowers swaying, streams bubbling, lantern blooms glowing in time with the new alliance. As the sun climbed higher, Captain Mara Ellison and Princess Emera stood side by side. 2 worlds, once strangers, now bound by flowers, music, and shared hope. The heart tree sapling at their feet was small, but its promise was vast. Its roots would grow deep, its branches would reach the skies, and under its shade, humanity and Aurelians would build a future brighter than any single star. And so, as laughter and song drifted across the palace gardens, the fragile language of petals and promise had blossomed into a new dawn among the stars. One where curiosity, respect, and kindness would guide the path of 2 worlds forever entwined.